Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this month's MPF webinar. And boy, we've hit on a hot topic, quite a bit of interest, big registration. And we're going to have a great program, rapid fire audience polling questions, and you're going to leave with so much benchmarking data around trends in law firm compensation systems. We have a lot of questions as people registered, which is a sign that this is the hot topic and people are interested in this. And
John, testing 1,
Uri,
2, 3. Yep.
we're on camera. We're
Oh,
on
beautiful.
camera.
Candid camera. I had to run somewhere and come right back. Hello. Hey, John,
You-
how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. Nice, beautiful day here in the ATL. And the pollen is starting to show up big time, as it always does this time of year.
Yes, it is. Got cold. Got a cold spell here in New York.
We did too. We got some freezing temps on Monday night, and
Is that right?
I covered my plants. I had gone out to the Home Depot and bought all my herbs, and I'm thinking, oh geez, they're all gonna die, and I'll have to go buy them again. And but they made it, so we're good. We're good.
Good.
Where are
Good.
you today, Uri?
I'm sitting in beautiful Midtown Manhattan.
Beautiful Midtown Manhattan.
Beautiful. Yeah, we cracked 50 degrees, so you know, that's a good day to me in March.
Excellent. Yeah, I was in Pittsburgh last week, and the high was in the mid 70s for like 3 days running. Crazy warm. And the birds were chirping, the dogwoods were blooming, and it's Pittsburgh in early March. I'm going, whoa.
There's some silver lining on global warming there, right, John?
Is that what it is?
I think so. I think so.
I don't know. The poor little birds and trees are kind of freaking out. And you may have read in the dogwoods in DC bloomed 3 weeks early this year.
Oh.
So, you know, Mother Nature is seems to be responding to some changes in the climate. But we have a great program. We'll get started right at the top of the hour. And as we always do, we have a hard stop, 60 minutes. And this is our little warm up to get our crowd all jazzed up and ready to go. For the first time, I believe this is our 46th webinar, Uri, since COVID hit. It's crazy. And we've attached the handout materials. So you may want to pick those up. We've got 20 polling questions, and we're going to pontificate a little bit about what we're learning. And we asked pretty much the same set of questions in a webinar smack dab in the middle of COVID, September 2021. So it'll be interesting to compare what we saw in 2021 as to trends in the compensation systems versus here we come out of COVID, our firms making changes to their systems. And it'll be interesting to kind of compare these results we generate with those we generated in 2021. And we'll send both of the polling results as part of our follow-up, if that's of interest to you. A lot of questions about how do we convince partners comfortable in our current system, benefiting nicely in our current system, to accept any notion of changes or tweaks to the system. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about that and the importance of tuning into your young folks who are carrying the firm and bringing in the business. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about seniority, origination credit, collections, and how people are compensated, if at all, for the non-billable firm building activities like leadership and mentorship and these sorts of contributions to the firm's goals and objectives. So we're going to get into a lot of topics here, and I can assure you we will be doing more programming on compensation, likely one for associates, best practices, a lot of questioning about that, and how managing partners are compensated. And the other firm leaders, members of your executive committees, department heads, practice group leaders, and these sorts of folks who are putting a lot of non-billable time on the books, and their rewards for that. So this is a hot topic, and certainly we'll do future programming around it. Uri, I'm looking at the clock. It's 2 o'clock, so let's roll. And formal welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the MPF webinar for March, and we're talking about trends in law firm compensation systems. And we've deviated a little bit from our normal format where we invite guest speakers, but we'll walk you through that a little bit and get through our introductions. Uri, we've said hello to one another. Most
Hi,
people on the
John.
call. Hi, Uri. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Uri, you no longer have a non-compete with your former employer. Is that right? You're a busy guy.
I appreciate you bringing that up, John. Very kind of you. Yes, I've been running around quite a bit. Thank you.
We're neck deep in our Managing Partner Forum coming up in May and are darn near a sellout. We'll talk a little bit about that and extend an early registration. Anyone on this call who wants to sign up, jump on that phone and we'll get you signed up at the early bird registration. Some announcements, we'll jump in. We got a lot to cover. Our series we are doing consistently now on the third Wednesday of the month, 2 o'clock Eastern is when we run live. We have our Managing Partner Forum coming up in May. In the fall, we'll be doing a fall symposium for women in law firm leadership. That'll be in Chicago. And
John, you have how many spots are left in Atlanta?
This Monday we had 10. We're now down to about 6.
Beautiful.
So it's
a great
filling
event.
up. There's only a few places left. And for me, I get a good night's sleep knowing I've got a good crowd and we're sold out. And I don't have to worry about things anymore. So this is the program in May. We're honing in on profitability and the leadership imperative to really tune in profitability. And guess what? That factors into compensation. And a couple of you ask, hey, what about these lawyers with the big books, but they're unprofitable books of business? Should we pay them big money, or should we be looking more at profitability than the top line? Trends in law firm compensation 165 is our registration today, and we'll be sending results of our polling questions. A number of folks, how do we influence people to change? Bring on the data. Here's what other firms are doing. I find that's very convincing to lawyers in particular. So we'll do lots of audience polling and we'll share all this with you. Please give us your feedback. And we really do read through this stuff, and it does factor into future topics, both here at this format as well as other programming we do for law firm leaders. Uri, anything else on the setup?
Well, I think you made the point alluded to earlier is that we usually do have guest speakers, and today's a little different. Today, our audience is our guest speakers, and we're looking forward to a real collaborative conversation of getting your feedback and sharing that data back to you in real time. And as John said, it'll be forwarded to you as well after it. So it's going to be
you'll be speaking through your votes.
Yes.
Speak with your votes. And as I like to kid, having voted in here in Georgia the past few years, we're good at the vote counting. Give us your feedback, please. And we want to thank our friends at Nine Sail. They've been writing up recaps of these programs for 6-8 months now, and we'll follow up with those. And they're doing a great job for us. So we want to do a call out and thank our friends there for the great job they're doing. So you're running a law firm. And I like to bring the analogies of sporting events. For business development, what fish do you want to catch? Align resources and recruiting accordingly. In the case of contributions of equity partners, I'm going to bring the analogy of a baseball team to bear. And if we're running a successful baseball team, we need all sorts of contributions. We need good pitching. We need good hitting, good fielders, good strong base runners, and we don't want our pitcher up there when there are 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th, bases loaded, and we're behind by 1 run. We probably don't want our pitcher out there. We probably want our best hitter making that contribution to the win. The pitcher's trying to, get to the ERA, the win-loss. They're both making contributions to a successful team, but in different ways. And not everybody's on the field. You need a manager in the dugout. And here are our associates in the bottom right corner. Our training, our training program, our farm system, our future firm owners. And so I bring the baseball analogy to just suggest that everybody makes different contributions in different ways. And perhaps we should measure the contributions of our rainmakers a bit differently than the contributions of our, billable hour grinders. Each important contributions, and we need each other in a way. Uri, anything else to my baseball analogy and setup here before we jump right in?
I think the baseball analogy is a good one. Different people have different strengths, and we're going to talk about today how to compensate and how to evaluate setting up a fair and effective compensation system for all, as you say, the different players.
That contribute differently, and so often you
Yes.
probably see it as well. Everybody's expected to contribute the 1,500, 1,600 hours. Everybody's expected to go out and do a little bit marketing. Everybody's expected to mentor associates, and let's find people to their highest and best use to the enterprise and reward them for the contributions at which they're best at contributing. That's kind of how I approach this theoretically. Uri, are you on board with me here?
I am on
We don't
board.
always agree, which I think is
Well,
great.
we'll get into it a little later. I know there are some areas we do disagree on. So let's move on.
That's what makes these fun. We're not shy about occasionally disagreeing with one another. So, how do you measure these different unique contributions? And let's I think one way to get people thinking is to bring on data, and we're going to generate lots of it in our time together this afternoon. So law firms, want to stick with the herd, what everybody else is doing. It's okay to be unique and stand out from the crowd, and maybe put something out there a little different if you want to track laterals or encourage associates. When you're registered, here's the first set of polling data. And Uri, this is remarkably similar to what we generated 3 years ago. 2021. We see little deviation here. Description that best describes your firm's compensation system, and it works well. Little tweaks here and there. 60% want to tweak the system a little bit, and a couple of you want to start all over. Two of our registrants said we need a complete makeover on our comp system. Uri, chime in anywhere if you want to pontificate here. Have you made changes to your system in the last 5 years? And as we answer our polling questions, we want you to think in terms of compensation for equity partners and think in terms of trends last 5 years at your firm. As we get into our polling questions, trends. So we ask here, have you made any significant changes to your system in the last 5? And 2/3 say, no, we haven't. But a third of you have.
Yeah, I think the tendency is to focus on the 2/3. I think a third, as you just alluded to, that's a significant change. Changing compensation to a fair compensation, to your point earlier, John, that is a big deal. You mess with people's compensation, you're messing with that third rail.
You're poking
I really
the bear.
You're poking the bear. So I think to do it, even a third people have changed over the last 5 years. I think that's significant, and I think people have a lot of takeaways today about where to change it. It should be meaningful. Tweaking, the numbers a little bit might not be worth it.
I'm going to disagree with you, Uri. I'm going to disagree with you. It's hard to make sweeping changes if people are vested in the system you've had for a while. And to come in and make major changes, get ready for a revolution. So I'm a proponent of the tweaking over time. If we want to, weight seniority less, weight firm building contributions more. I think phasing them in so nobody gets gored if we do make changes to the system. We have a chance to evolve, adapt, and modify our behaviors and contributions accordingly. But here we asked, are you trending more objective, looking at numbers, quantifiable data, versus subjective? And the trend here, Uri, we saw it 3 years ago. Here it stays, a trend toward more objectivity in compensation systems.
Yeah.
Comment?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is clearly the trend. We'll get into some transparency a little later, but this is certainly the trend, is to make it more objective. Subjective sounds like closed, arbitrary. Those are sort of the Yeah.
I like
So,
you. You're a good guy. You're my buddy. I'll take care of you.
yeah.
I think the young folks certainly want to see more objectivity.
Yep.
Uh, but I think, we'll talk about this, objectifying subjective contributions, the leadership, the mentoring, the business development.
Hmm.
We haven't yet seen the result, but we got you out there doing the right things, president of the bar, whatever. What's that worth, if anything,
Yeah.
when it comes to your compensation? You get a lawyer going off to be president of the State Bar Association. That's going to be a lot of time away
Yeah.
from clients, away from billing, and what's that worth? So these are things to be thinking about. Our first question that we always ask, let me pull up our poll, Uri, and if I don't close it right, remind me. You know how I
Right.
am. I'll open the poll and reveal, and I forget to close it when we move on. So let's launch our first polling question. This is the first of 20 polling questions we'll be asking this afternoon. Firm size, and here come 47% in, 52%. I'm going to wait till we get about 75% of you all in, and then we'll shut it down and reveal the results. I'm up to 81% participation. You got 3, 2, 1, close, share, firm
Hmm.
sizes. This is fairly typical. We're all about mid-law and helping
Hmm.
leaders of smaller and mid-sized law firms be effective. So this is about typical of firm sizes that are drawn to these calls. So keep that in mind as we share our data and move through the program. Partner satisfaction with your system. We thought we'd start here. And let me roll our next polling question. And again, you can pull these. We've incorporated them into the webinar here. And the question is generally, how satisfied are your equity partners with your firms? And Uri, my technology is not behaving today.
There you go.
Current compensation system. Generally, how satisfied? And we'll give you some results to pick from. My partners love the current system. Generally, they're satisfied. Generally, there's leanings, there's some grumbling, or people are not happy with the system. So we often have neutral in there, but I took it out
Hmm.
because I wanted you to lean. Are people happy or a little disgruntled with the current system? Murray, what do you think our crowd's going to say as
I
to
think our
partner
crowd is,
satisfaction with the current system?
I think they're going to say somewhat satisfied.
And you are correct. Boy, you're a smart guy. 2/3 somewhat satisfied, 13% are happy as clams. Good on you. Let me know if you want to be on our faculty, because we'd like to learn from you. 20% somewhat dissatisfied. It looks like we've got one or two firms where there's some challenges, but there we are on partner satisfaction with the current system.
John, is that what you see as you visit with firms? Do you find people are generally happy?
Generally, there's no perfect system.
Mm.
You're always going to want to see systems that supports the contributions you're making to the firm. So
Hmm.
if I'm a grinder, I want collections heavily compensated. If you're a finder, you want to see, origination credit heavily rewarded. No perfect system, but I think generally partners are happier. They'd go somewhere else in this
Right.
day of free agency.
I think that's right. I think
You
that's
know,
right. Well, it's
they'll go
self-selective.
somewhere else and try to take the book of business with them.
Yeah.
So our next polling question, let me hide this one and move on. And
Hmm.
again, keep on me if I'm not doing this right. And our question here is from the list below, which term best describes your firm's current system? And here are the
John, what do
choices
you,
we're going to put out to
I'm
you.
gonna I'm gonna ask you to
Uh-oh.
predict. I'm gonna ask you to predict from the list below. What do you think people will describe their system? Parity, lockstep, mostly objective, heavy on origination, mostly objective, heavy on collections, 50-50, objective, subjective considerations, or it's mostly subjective. What do you think people are going to say?
I think it's important to look at the numbers and be
Mm-hmm.
mostly objective, heavy on collections is
Wow.
what I think. You got not yeah, you got to, reward the people bringing in the monies. Um, so I'd say that's what I'd say. I don't know that I agree with that's the right system, but I think that's what most of the firms today are going to share with us. And
Okay.
sure enough, let's pull
Show
it up. There we are.
collections.
Uh, Mostly objective, heavy on collections.
Yeah. I think.
27%, kind of got a hybrid going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to see that lockstep's not too popular. That seniority-based lockstep system.
Mm-hmm.
If seniority is going to
Mm-hmm.
be weighted, I think it should be light
Yep.
as to overall contributions.
We
What do
agree
you think?
there. I want to ask your opinion though, John.
Yes,
You predicted here on
yes.
collections versus originations. What do you think it should be? Mostly objective,
I
heavy on
think
collections, or heavy on origination, or something else?
no, no, no. I think it should be number 4. To be honest with you, I think
50-50.
the firm building contributions are very, very important and often undercompensated or not compensated at all. The leadership, the mentoring, how do managing partners get paid?
Yeah.
What about your practice group leaders and department heads? And they're investing lots of time in these roles, and I think it's important that that time be measured, recognized, and rewarded if it's well spent. So I like 4. If I were to pick the second favorite, I'd go with choice number 3. I'm sorry, choice number 2. Get those
Oh,
rainmakers well taken care of. Take care of your rainmakers, the people
I.
bringing it in.
Mm-hmm. I think you and I agree almost on that completely, which is, I
Rain
think that origination is really the way they have to do on equity partners, and I go very
for equity,
simple
for equities, right?
for equities.
That's an
The
important
prop,
distinction right there.
yes. When we hear what's not functioning in firms, John, at the equity level, I would say 9 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, not enough origination by the full broad equity partnership. And it's the number one problem I hear when
Yep.
you talk about that. So I think reward it. So I think it should be number one, the origination. Um, I think a lot of firms do, as we saw their collections.
Here's what we got.
Yep.
So good stuff to share with your partners if you're thinking about some tweaks, and they ask, hey, what are other firms doing? We give you a pretty decent set of data here to present. The process, we're going to shift gears and talk about the process of
John, clear
setting
the slide, clear the
compensation.
poll, clear the
Oh,
poll.
I'm glad you're good. Good. Thanks for reminding me.
There we go. The
Uh,
process slide.
the
Everybody
process
loves that slide.
slide. Yeah, the process slide. I've used this one before. Because it can get a little sloppy sometimes in firms, and very contentious in firms when we go to set compensation. So we're going to shift into a set of questions that talk about your compensation setting process for equity partners, equity shareholders. So let's move right into that next question, which is from the list below. And it's a multiple choice because I can't do open-ended in this format. It just gets too complicated. But from the list below, which term best describes your firm's process to set compensation for its equity partners? And we say open, transparent, easy peasy. Open, transparent, but not so easy peasy. Somewhat open, but not a whole lot of back and forth. It's concentrated with an executive committee or a comp committee, or we're running a black box here. Jones Day, famous for its black box, and I often see this involve first generation firms where the founders are large and in charge and a little reluctant to share the numbers with others. What do you think is going to be our number one answer here, Uri? I got 80% of our participants voted. What do you think?
I think it's going to be among the equity partners, very open, transparent, but hardly smooth and easy.
Somewhat
Close,
open,
close,
not a
but not
lot back and forth. Here's the schedule, up or down vote kind of thing. 25%, it's easy peasy. Everybody's open, knows the deal. 6% on the black box. 6% on the black box. And the notion here, people ask often, John, what do you mean by the black box? People don't see the performance. They don't see the compensation. The theory is if you don't know what others are making, you don't know how your performance and contributions compare to the others, you got nothing to fight about.
Yeah.
And you trust
John,
the keeper of the black box is treating you fairly.
we're going to ask, I know, transparency question next, but before we go to that next slide, I just have an opinion about this, and I'm very opinionated on compensation, which is if it's not open, if it's not very open, why is your strategy, which your compensation plan should be, a manifestation of your strategy? Why isn't it open? I mean, how foolish is that for you to have a strategy, a plan, a way of rewarding people meeting that plan, and then it not being open and transparent? John, I see there's a
Uri,
big
we've done,
disconnect.
I think as for the equity partners, as an owner
Right,
of the business, you
right,
should have every right to see the numbers and the performance reports. You're an owner of the business. We've done some conversation around what you share with the associates.
right.
And do they see their numbers? What are in the columns? Do they see their performance vis-a-vis the other associates? What about your income partners? You're trying to engage them. And Uri, what we see is more transparency equals more engagement equals
Yep,
higher retention.
yes.
We like transparency, and I think you do too.
I do. If these are your priorities, why would you tell your workforce, or as you pointed out, your owners, the engines of the business, they don't know what you want to incentivize? I mean, how foolish does that sound?
Well,
As
Uri,
open,
what
transparent
I've
as
heard, I'm
possible.
sure you've heard it too. I'm fine making $350,000 a year until I find out my partner down the hall is making 365,
Well, but
and I want to know why. And
well, and you should have an answer why. But the answer should be because the guy down the hall did X, Y, Z, and you did not.
yeah,
And
I
guess what
agree with
that'll
you.
do long term? Guess what that does long term, right? Changes that behavior.
I agree with you 100%. And if you don't know, but you know the spirit behind the black box. If I don't know the
Yep,
lawyer down the hall is
I
making
know.
5 grand more a year, I got nothing to argue about.
Right. I
So
hear that. I hear that, but I think more and more people just don't trust them. I hear what you're saying. I don't have to argue, but people won't
trust. You
trust
got
them.
to trust the keeper of the black box that you're getting a
Yeah,
fair shake.
that's right. Let's talk about the
So
process.
I think
Let's talk.
once we release the data, it's hard to rein it back in. If you're running the black box or holding that
Yep.
data close, once you put it out there, it's hard to reel it back in. So as we deal with first generation firms
Hmm.
moving to their next wave of equity partners,
Hmm.
I think you got to start to share and open up the books. Maybe not every darned, paper in the book, but you got to start to share and engage and let people know
John,
what they're getting into.
let's see if people are listening to you. Let's look at the trend of transparency. Let's look
Did
at
we
that in
shared
our
this one
next question.
already? Correct, Uri? Did
Yes,
I show that
we
one?
did.
Okay.
Yep, we did. And now we're going to the trend.
So transparency at your firm in terms of what
Mhm.
you're sharing, and this is just keep it to the equity partners here.
Right.
Just we'll get to the associates, I think, with another program and what you're sharing with them. They want to know. They've got questions. So let's launch this polling question. Is your transparency trending toward a more open system, or are you hiding more and more information? And Uri, what do you predict on this one?
I think people are going to say somewhat more transparent. My sense is people should be considerably more transparent, but I think people are going to say somewhat. Over the years, we're becoming somewhat more transparent. Not showing everything, but somewhat more transparent. I think people, if they were honest, would say. But let's see.
At 75%. If you haven't voted, tell us what you think. I want to get to that 75, 80% threshold before we share results, and we just hit it. The share on this.
About the same, a little bit, nosing out somewhat
Or
more
maybe a little
transparent.
more information. A little more information.
Well, but as you say, the trend is, look at that, it's all on the top there. We're
Well, we got
heading
one
toward more
or two
transparency.
firms bucking the trend. But I think opening and sharing leads to more engagement.
Oh,
Uh,
sure.
what do you share? How do you share it? When do you share it? That's all to be decided, and there is no perfect system. But there's certainly, obviously, a very marked trend toward more transparency among mid-sized firms on today's call.
John, do you see that happening?
Yes,
Okay.
and I think it's the right thing to do. Share if you want to. All the equities I think have every right to see the books in their entirety. I really do. And if you want to engage those non-equities, they want to know what they're getting into. And you're going to share that partnership agreement. You're going to share some financials, or just say sign here, trust us, it's a good deal. Come on.
John,
Who's gonna,
John, John, what I see, oddly enough, what pushes the transparency among the equity partners and even the non-equity partners, what I oddly see is it's the outsiders. And by that, I mean laterals. Laterals
yes.
come in, and the laterals now want to know what's the compensation. And by the way, if I'm going to be telling a potential lateral, heck, I better be explaining and have a real good answer, a fair, transparent system to share with my equities. After all, I'm telling it to the guy who doesn't even work yet for us,
Yeah.
for goodness sake.
I had a call from managing partner this morning talking about unfunded retirement obligations, and
Ooh,
they're getting a little tension there, and what they share with their income partners on the ascent to become an owner. Do we let them know we owe gobs of money to retiring partners? What about laterals? You know, and look what we owe our retiring partners that's unfunded. Hard to recruit against that, if you got too much of it.
and today's laterals want to know.
They want to
In
know. They have
fact,
questions.
in
I'd want
fact,
to
John,
know.
we've talked about that study Major Lindsay did last year of lateral hires. You remember that? We've
Yep.
discussed that study together, where it was, why did you choose one firm over the other? This is based on 1,200 lateral placements, transparency, fair compensation. That's how they chose between firms. It matters. So yeah,
And as part of that is the culture.
yeah.
Is yours of a culture of openness and transparency and trust, or is there a lot of hiding and secrecy going on?
Mm.
So your comp system should align with your culture. And if you want to see sharing and teamwork and cross-selling, I think finding ways to measure, reward, and support that, as opposed to it's mine, nobody steer clear, my clients. Yeah,
Yeah.
my first firm, Gunster, just banned the term my clients in the spirit of firm first. It's about us. And we share and we cross sell and we support one another and value one another's contributions. So some things to think about. Here's a question that we're going to ask that speaks to level. Do you have, basically we're trying to get it, do you have a compensation committee? And let me pull up that polling question. We got to kick it up, Uri. I'm looking at the time. We're halfway through and still have a lot of questions to ask. So we're going to have, me, I yak a lot. So tell me to move it along if we need. At what level in the organization is your firm setting compensation? Our executive committee does that. We have a comp committee separate and apart from the EC that does that. All the firm owners are in on it. We got that black box, or we got some other level of the firm setting compensation. Where do you think it's happening, Uri?
Comp committee or everyone? Mm-hmm.
Executive committees. I think in a lot of smaller firms, they don't have a separate comp committee.
Yep,
So the
that's right.
executive committee takes that on. But you got the 25% where everybody's involved. I got to think those are quite small firms that are
Yeah.
giving us answer number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we're seeing about 40%. We see it again here. About 40% of firms mid-size have separate compensation committees. And how is that compensation committee, how is it determined? Is it appointed? Is it elected? Is it a subset of the executive committee? Stuff to think through. I think you get to 50 lawyers or more, the argument for a separate comp committee becomes pretty compelling. You with me on that?
I am. I mean, I see a lot of firms where the comp committee is a subsection of the partnership. The problem I see often is that they're not in sync with the executive committee in terms of the priorities of the firms. Then you have almost competing priorities. I'm sure you see that too, John.
Well, and it's been said, I had a
good.
consultant buddy, long retired, who used to say, if you have an executive committee and a comp committee, you don't have an executive committee. People tune into the comp committee.
I think that's a good
and you know, that's where the money gets distributed, you know, and everybody cares about compensation. So let's just keep rolling along here. We're going to ask a series of questions now. And we got 4 kind of general areas that firms look to measure and reward. And we're going to ask in each of these 4 areas, do you weight it lightly or on up to heavily? And are you trending toward less or more emphasis on this particular contribution? So with that setup,
our first is seniority.
Isn't he cute? I love featuring kids in these slides. But so, seniority. And Uri, I guess we decided I was going to take these, right, and lead questions, and you will be first to share your thoughts as we see results, and then I'll chime in as we go. So this first one is going to talk about the weight your compensation system for equity partners puts on seniority. And we didn't define heavily weighted or lightly weighted. So we'll ask you to use some of your discretion. Is yours a heavily seniority-based lockstep system, or does seniority matter at all? Uri, give me your prediction.
I think people are going to say lightly weighted. That's what I think people are going to say.
Wow.
Or no factor at all. Yeah.
Don't matter. It's
John, in practice, do you see that? I mean, I do question that, I must say. I knew people would say that.
Yeah.
But what's your sense?
I think it depends largely on where the firm is in its life cycle. And if it's still a first generation firm where the founders are large and in charge, they're going to want to see seniority weighted. We took the risk. We've been here the longest. We built this place, and we should be rewarded for it just because we've been here for 25, 30 years. I see that a lot in smaller first-generation firms. But as we mature and evolve and we're bringing on laterals and young partners, you know, performance is the key here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I see firms say they lightly weigh them, but there's a sense that they get the benefit of the doubt, they get more A for effort, et cetera, et cetera.
They get the corner office.
Oh, sure.
They get the fancy perks and expense accounts, all those good things. Our next question is going to ask you. Now, this is good data. If you want to convince your firm that maybe we should weight less seniority. So let me throw the next polling question that's going to ask about the trend last 5 years. Are you weighting seniority more or less? Which way is it trending? Uri, what do you think?
Oh, considerably less weight. Considerably less weight. People said it barely matters, and now they're going to say it's mattering even less every year. That's my guess of what people will report.
The trend, certainly toward less weight to seniority, but still a lot of firms.
John, show the results. Show the results.
Kind of, yeah, good. Keep me
about
on
the
that.
Same. About the same, somewhat less, yeah. So trending down.
You know, just because you've been around a while, okay, I think that's worth something, but not a lot. I think it's more about performance and what you've done for me lately. Maybe looking at 3-year averages, 3-year lookbacks
Mm-hmm.
on the contributions you're making as an owner of the place.
John,
That's
I
my
think
thought.
John, I think we're getting into the slightly controversial. Is that a way to describe the next two topics?
Well, how heavily do you weight collections? And by this, the term
Yes.
collections, I kind of define as the hours you bill and collect on your time, your personal collections, the hours you bill and collect, not what your associates that you're feeding work bill and collect, or your paralegals, what you personally bill and collect. And boy, a lot of firms are on this, billable hours, today's income, what dollars you're bringing in the door. That's what's most important. The short-term collections you're bringing to the firm. What do you think? Is this going to be heavily weighted, moderately weighted? Where do you think, Uri?
I think it's going to be heavily weighted, and we're going to debate if it should be originations versus collections in a little bit. But I think people are going to be heavily weighted. We've always been. You do your hours, get your time. That's your biggest contribution to the firm. That's what I think we're going to see. What
Well,
about
if
you,
you're a
John?
grinder, certainly you want this heavily weighted. If you're a finder, you probably want to see origination more heavily weighted. No
Mm-hmm.
right or wrong, but can't we get along? I need you to do the work I'm bringing in the door. You need me to bring the work to you as a service partner. We're going to talk a little bit about how service partners generate a book of business, shared origination. That's a
Mm-hmm.
hot topic. So let me close this and move on.
Wait,
And
John, we didn't see that. We didn't see the results.
oh,
Yeah, heavily weighted, very heavily weighted, moderately weighted.
boy, look at 4%. Doesn't matter.
Mm.
Interesting,
Well,
but I mean, collections are important. We need to have people
mhm.
billing the hours, putting out and generating today's income. I love a lot of what David Maister talks about in his book True Professionalism. One of the chapters that sticks out at me is billable hours. That's important for today's income, and indeed it is. But what we do with our non-billable, and let's get the non out of our firm vocabulary, our investment time, our firm building time, that's going to determine our future. And let's make sure we're putting that into our system, because if we're all about the hours, we're going to get very short-term oriented and how we approach the practice. And I think we need to take a longer view than beyond today's billable hours.
John, let's go to our next question, which shows the trend on collection weighting. People collect, they are
Yes.
weighting it a lot currently. How has that been trending in
Going
your
up or
firm?
down? Are you weighting origination collections
Collection.
more or less over the past 5 years? Are you making any tweaks to that weight on collections past 5 years? Giving your prediction, Uri, I'm at 80.
About the same or even more weight. People, it remains, I believe, a very, as we saw in the previous, very strong barometer. Let's see.
And you're spot
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
Spot
yeah.
on with that. Collections are important. The grinders that are churning out the billable hours certainly believe it's important. But I subscribe to that whole finder minder grinder thing, and you gotta reward the finders who are bringing in the work and feeding those grinders. We'll move into our next set of questions here, which speaks to the direction we asked that one. Here's our little
Origination.
marketer. Here he is, bringing in the dollars, not practicing a lot of law, but boy, the clients love him, and he's bringing in work and feeding lots of people. Let's put up our polling question on waiting for origination credit at your firm. Does your firm weight it very heavily? Not at all? And kind of gradients in between. And Uri, you were supposed to ask me what I think of this.
John, what do
Remember
you
when?
think people do? What do you think
What?
people do? And then I have a follow-up question, but what do you think people do? What are they people going to report? Heavily weighted, very heavily weighted?
I think it's heavily weighted in most firms. I think you got to take care of those rainmakers bringing in the business. It's too easy for them to leave. Clients hire the lawyer, not the law firm, generally speaking. They'll hire the
Hmm.
lawyer. They'll follow the
Hmm.
lawyer if he or she decides to pick up and move stakes. So I think it is very important to take good care of your rainmakers. And in most firms, rainmaking origination, I think, is actually undercompensated.
I agree with you. I think people are going to say it's heavily weighted, but I think people tend to under. Yep, there you go.
So origination, we still have those firms. Look at that, 8%. We don't track origination. I
Hmm.
hear that from time to time. The thought being, we're all responsible for originating, and we don't want to fight over who's getting origination credit. And if we're heavily weighting it, there may be fights over whose client, whose matter, and we make it go away if we're all expected to do work. Maybe we have a big stable of institutional clients,
Yeah.
and we don't have to go out and market the originators because all we have to do is take good care of what we have, and the work keeps coming. If we have that big institutional client base, I think insurance defense firms, where it's more minding the client than going
Hmm.
out and bringing in more defense work.
John,
So
for every firm that says what you just said, and I know you hear it, for every firm that says that, I hear 10 times many more firms that say, you'll never guess. We don't have enough rainmakers among the equity partners. Who thunk it? And so focusing on it, prioritizing on it, heavily weighting it, and really heavily weighting it, um, I don't see enough firms doing it. Let's talk about the trend on origination, John.
the trend on origination, folks, are we weighting it? Again, this is kind of a 5-year.
Yep.
Are we weighting it more or less than we did 5 years ago? And I'm going to predict that there's more weight to it than 5 years
Yep.
ago.
Yep. Oh, I think so. I think it's the laterals pushing it too, John.
Yeah,
What do you see?
I see exactly that. The laterals who are hard charging, going to lead our firm into the future. Riders, drivers of the firm who are making it happen, versus folks who are just kind of along for the ride. The people who are really cranking it out, bringing in the work, and bringing in the leadership. So let me close that poll, and our next one speaks
Show the
to.
results, John. Show the
Oh, I
results.
didn't share them. I'm sorry.
Hmm. Is origination being more heavily weighted? About the same. I mean, more
Seven
top on
percent
top. Yep.
say they're weighting it a bit more.
Yep.
Again, this is a trend, and
Hmm.
um, interesting to consider if your firm is looking to tweak. And people, what are other firms doing? Well, here I just sat in on this webinar, and here's what 165 firms say they're doing.
Okay,
Uh,
John.
let
With
me
two
throw
questions to
out.
drill down. Yeah, let's drill down on origination. So
This
that's your
is
firm.
origination, and we asked that question already. Let me jump through the slides. I just love that little kid with
Go
the
ahead.
dollar bills falling. Don't give me this stuff, Murray.
There we go. We're
Leave
here. We're
it
here. We're
alone.
here. A lot of
So,
questions, John.
what's your firm on shared origination? Does your firm encourage it? And this is kind of a general question. But yeah, we have a firm policy in place. We want to see shared origination. The lawyer who brings in the matter versus the equity partner who does the work. That appellate lawyer, that tax lawyer. Yeah, but the two lawyers involved got to hash it out as to how they might share origination on a new matter. That's what I most often see. Uri, what do you predict might be our response to this question on shared origination?
Between the lawyers involved.
I think that's what we most often see. And
Yep.
sure enough, negotiation perhaps between the finder who's bringing it in and the grinder who's cranking it out, and they got to work a deal. I was at the second firm I was in-house was a very formulaic system, heavily rewarding origination for life. For life, you got client origination on the new. Oh, you can imagine the fighting over. Well, I met that guy 30 years ago at the convenience store. He's mine. Yeah, but he didn't call you with his matter. We can get into a lot of argument over my client, your client. So sharing origination, is it something we encourage? Is there policy around it? And most firms, 19% say they have policy, 19% say they don't have policy. Most leave it to the lawyers involved to hash it out between themselves. Surprised, Uri, by that?
No, I think that's the way they do it. I think I've shared my opinion on this, which is I think the sharing is often abused by partners. If it's really a shared origination, meaning the two of you went out, showed your skills, demonstrated why they should be hired based on their specialties, I think that's appropriate for shared origination. Where I see it abused is where it's the guy down the hall who never met the client, and I think the way you refer to them as the grinder, the work gets brought to their desk, and in order to, and this is dysfunctional, in order to incentivize that partner to do the work, you share the origination credit.
Bribe him with some origination so he'll
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. But I
I'm
think
going to
that
disagree with you here, Uri.
I
I'm
know
going to
you do.
disagree with you here. I'm
I
a
know.
consummate rainmaker. I'm bringing it in. I'm not an employment lawyer, though, and I wrestle in an employment matter. And now I want to find an employment lawyer, a partner, not an associate or non-equity partner, an equity partner. And well, what's in it for me, says that employment lawyer. What's in it for me? Because if I can go self-originate, I can double dip the system. Whereas if I work on your client's matter, uh, you know, I want to see something for it. I think, if we want to cross sell, if we want to see teamwork, if we want to see sharing, I think shared origination credit's really, really important. And I've seen firms where the practice groups share origination among themselves, and the practice group determines, who the finders, minders, grinders are to promote a team approach. And I don't know. I think shared origination is a good thing to encourage, and there should be policy around that. Otherwise, the second firm I work with, heavily weighted origination. The internal competition among lawyers to generate files from our current clients was crazy. And they'd go out, market independently of one another because it's mine. And we want teamwork and sharing, and there's no perfect system, but I think shared origination is really, really important if we want to see the share and the cross sell and the team-based marketing and business development.
Okay, agree to disagree. Let's go on, John.
How about sunsetting origination? And the concept here is you bring in the new client. Is that your client for life? Or at some point, does it revert to become a firm client after 3 years, 5 years? My first law firm I was in-house sunset origination after 3 at the client level. Matter origination was still in play. Who got the call? Who did the client reach out to? But at the client level, the concept was it becomes a firm client. It becomes our client, not mine and yours. You'll get credit on the first 3 years, but not for life. So let's just see how this crowd may be sunsetting. And if they do so 3 years, 5 years, or if it's a client for life situation. Uri, give me your prediction. What do you think most firms in this room are doing when it comes to the notion of sunsetting? Uri? Oh, Uri.
Lifetime origination credit.
And that is exactly what we're going to see here.
John, I think lifetime origination credit.
Hang on. Let me pull my slides back up. Hang on. I lost my screen here. Bear with me. There it is. Okay. Yeah, I got so many things going on. Try to run polling, try to run PowerPoint, try to make coherent statements. Sunsetting, and the results on this are
John, we don't do this.
closing
Yeah.
and sharing.
Okay. Yep, lifetime. This is what most firms do.
73% client for life.
Yep.
Wow. Good luck transitioning those clients when the senior partners, wanna retire, and we want to, ship their clients to the next wave of lawyers. Because I ain't gonna open that client relationship until the bitter end. Because you're paying me on what I command, what I bring in. I'm not interested in sharing that with anybody. I run into this problem a lot, where retiring partners won't share their clients, won't invite the younger lawyers to get to know those clients. They want to control it until they're done. I think client transition takes a while. And boy, origination credit for life, 73%. There's 14% don't track it.
Mm-hmm. John, this is your specialty, firm building contributions, or as you say,
Managing
investment
partner
income.
contributions. We're going to do a program, I think, a follow-up, how managing partners get paid.
Yep.
In our survey, we asked that, and are you paid at all for all this leadership you're bringing to the firm? And so let's toss this question out there, which is firm building contribution, leadership, mentoring, these sorts of things that are difficult to quantify, but really important to the long-term success of our enterprise. Are we finding ways to measure and reward leadership, mentoring, business development? The clients aren't here yet, but boy, we love the fact that you're president of the local chamber of commerce. And that's taken a lot of time. What do you think, Uri? Are firms weighting origination credit? Firm building contribution?
I think they moderately weight it or lightly weight it. Mm-hmm.
Look at that, 22%. Doesn't matter at all. We're focused on the short-term billable hours and collections. I would think most of those firms are. In my opinion, that's very short-sighted. And
these are the owners. These are the people who are supposed to be driving strategy.
They're supposed to be training young lawyers. They're supposed to be leading. They're supposed to be business developing and showing up at meetings and being good equity partners. And the firm building contributions are so important. So, we've asked Uri at our live conference, and how do you, as a managing partner, how much time do you spend the role as managing partner? A lot.
Mm-hmm.
And do you track your time? Many don't. They don't bother because it's not rewarded, recognized, valued, or appreciated. Wow. Why should I do that? Why should I do that if I'm not being valued and compensated? Here's what we got on that question.
And the trend is firm building contributions trending in recent years. When you look back in your 5 years, what's trending? More, less?
I'm going to say we're trending toward somewhat more weight is going to be my prediction, but people are voting, and I don't want to influence their votes, even though I may have.
We've just said you're foolish if you're not, right, John?
Well,
people will be honest. It's an honest group.
Is it? Okay, all right. It's a group of lawyers. You're right. So I think we're going to see here a little more weight. Firms are starting to recognize and value and appreciate the importance of these contributions. I think we're going to see more weight here.
Yeah.
So a third say they're putting more weight to firm building contributions. I'm looking at the clock here, Uri, and we've got 5 minutes left and a few questions, and we'll just hammer through them. We asked about the weight to firm building, now chips on the table. So let me go rapid fire on this. And the notion is, I love this question. The multiple, the difference between your most highly paid equity partner and your least paid equity partner. What's that factor? Is it 10 or more? I've seen firms often where they're still founding partners, first generation firms, where the founder is making $1 million a year, and we got some partners over here, barely scratching 100,000. What I see here, Uri, and I know you have thought on this, is 4 to 5 between our most heavily compensated equity and our least compensated equity, about 4 to 5. What do you think?
I think that's right. I think that's right. Mm-hmm.
That 28%,
Yeah.
less than a doubling. Interesting. Hope this data is helpful to you guys. And are we seeing the spread between high and low increasing or decreasing? Are we becoming more compressed or less compressed over the past 5 years? Your prediction, Mr. Gutfreund?
Oh, somewhat more spread.
Look at that. Look at that.
Interesting.
More compression between the high and
More
low. That reeks of socialism. Right? I think you got to pay your top performers what they're worth if you want to hold on to them. Because
this is our last questions related to that, John, and
they will go somewhere else if they're not happy. And I love this set of questions too. And I'll ask for your predictions, Uri, as we launch our polls.
Ooh.
Do you believe your firm's top performers are over or under compensated? Your top performers in terms of business generation, revenue to the firm, are they over or under compensated? What do you think, Uri? Top performers.
Somewhat undercompensated. That's what I see.
That's what I see too. And I think, there's always going to be a little socialism within the firm. Mm-hmm. But boy, those top performers, I see, that's where the action comes, it seems. If we're going to see any changes to the comp system, it's coming from those up and comers.
I think we'll have our last question in a second, but I think people understate this, somewhat undercompensated. I think they're far more. I think they're significantly undercompensated many times. People don't realize it, but many times. That's the danger. Let's do the last question, John, related to this.
Your superstars undercompensated. I don't know. I want to take good care of those superstars. I want to make sure they hang around and bring along their friends. So our final question before we kind of summarize and offer closing remarks speaks to your chronic, keyword, chronic underperformers. Are they over or under compensated? Uri, what do you think?
People are going to say somewhat overcompensated, but they are significantly overcompensated. What do you think, John?
I think somewhat is going to be our number one answer, but I'll agree with you. I think a lot of underperformers are overpaid. And often it's that lockstep compensation system that brings us to this point and creates some tensions within the firm. There we are. 20% of our audience thinks their chronic underperformers are significantly overcompensated. So here's some data. That's our last question, by the way.
John, that's the honest 20% there. The rest are just not being as honest. Yeah.
Interesting. Very few, only 17% tell us they're getting paid what they're bringing to the firm. So that is interesting as well. We are right at the top of the hour. Here's our observations. We've kind of touched on this stuff throughout. There's no
move it forward, John. Slide.
They are all over the place. Hang on. They are all over the place. We get these managing partners together at our conferences, and invariably we're going to get into compensation. And there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no perfect. What's right for your firm at this point in its history? What behaviors do you want to reward, encourage, incent? And if it's all about grinding, compensate the collections. If it's about leadership and business development, you got to look to those firm building contributions and origination credit. No perfect system. What are your strategic goals? What kind of culture are you trying to build? Are we a loose confederation of solo practitioners, or are we a team? A team, recognizing and rewarding that we all don't hit and field and pitch and run bases really fast. Reward that sharing, teamwork. We like, Uri and I both, the transparency. Comp system should evolve and adapt. It's only natural as your firm evolves and adapt. And if you're going to phase in changes, do them over time. Kind of increment that, less weight on seniority. This year we're at 30%, 25, 20, 15. Phase it out over time so you don't gore people with big wholesale changes to the system. Take good care of those top performers. Here's some of our reminders, and we want to extend an offer. We've had 2 people register for the Managing Partner Forum during our call, just right now. So if you want to come to this program in May, call us, and we'll extend to you the early bird discount, $600 off what we're charging people if you register online. So call us by the end of the week, and spaces are running out fast. Our next webinar is going to be on the 17th of April, and we're going to have Rob Mattern, and the folks at Mattern Associates talk to us about expense management. And then, of course, we'll follow up with our on-demand recording, handout material for the program, and give us your feedback. Our contact information, Uri's looking for clients.
John, you got to just change my email address there.
Well, I could have done that.
Please.
So thank you for being with us, everyone. And give us your feedback. We really do tune in. Hope to see you in April. Hope to see you May 1 and 2 in Atlanta. So come on down, and we'll show you some other Southern hospitality. Uri, thank you. We've run a little over, but it's 3:02. I think we did pretty good covering as much material as we wanted to cover.
Great job, John. Great being with you today. Thanks so much, everyone.
See you soon. Bye, everybody.